You are looking live at the Martinsville Speedway, site of today's First Data 500. Cash and tickets is what it's all about. So let's head to the studio for today's edition of Racers Odds. Here's your host, John Roberts.
Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Racers Odds. We're glad you're with us today because the landscape is changing when it comes to sports wagering across the country, and NASCAR is along for the ride. Here on Racers Odds, we'll give you the stats, scenarios, and numbers you need to make the wise wagers when it comes to betting on NASCAR's top series. And to help us do that, as always, we have championship crew chief Jeff Hammond and the editor of Point Spread Weekly, Steve Makinen, with us. So, Jeff, when you look at Martinsville, it's the last short track of the season, but it's the first race in the round of 8. And we've had racing here since 1948, so this little track is long on history.
Yes, it really is, John. And the cool thing about it is some people may say, hey, don't forget we got to go to Phoenix later on. But this is legitimately the last short track. It looks almost like the one you'll see in a lot of different communities around the country. Martinsville Speedway is one tough customer. It's got a lot of challenges, brakes not overdriving the corner, wheel hop, driver frustration. A lot of factors go into play. Pit road is very, very challenging, and we've only got 9 guys that have been to victory lane here today.
So when you're looking to pick your winner, you got to remember it's as important to slow down here as it is to go fast. But some of the fastest guys all season long, Steve, are on the top of our list when it comes to the favorites. Those, of course, being Joe Gibbs Racing teammates. A lot of talk this week about Kyle Busch.
Yeah, it looks to me as if there's any time he's going to be breaking out, it would be a track like this. We'll go through the stats here a lot throughout the show, but Busch is certainly going to be a contender, and several of the recent winners will also be contenders as well.
So for Kyle Busch, 8 straight top 10s at this racetrack, including 2 wins. And also he opened up, Steve, at plus 250, currently plus 350. Still the favorite, though, on top. But it shouldn't surprise us, though, because he's second to his teammate Denny Hamlin, who has just had blazing speed so far. But it should not surprise us, though, that these two guys are up there on top of the odds boards with what they've done in the history of this racetrack.
Absolutely. As of Tuesday, when I ran my first simulation, it looked like there were 3 clear-cut favorites, and it was Hamlin, Keselowski, and Kyle Busch. And the odds makers have dropped Keselowski out a little bit, and I'm interested to hear a little bit more about that today. But Busch and Hamlin should be right up there running up front all day long.
So why you see Denny Hamlin there holding up all 5 fingers is he has 5 victories at this racetrack, and he's also coming off a victory at Kansas. So right now, for Denny Hamlin, everything seems to be going exactly where they want it to be.
Well, I think there is a such thing as momentum if you're going to the same race, same type of racetrack. So say you have 3 mile-and-a-halfs in a row, and you run well in the first one. Well, immediately you've already got a good baseline to start your second one, and then you have a good result. More than likely, you're going to fine-tune it and be even better for the third. I think momentum stops when you go to an entirely different racetrack, and it doesn't matter if you've won 4 in a row on those mile-and-a-halfs. If you then go to Martinsville or Bristol, nothing applies. There really is nothing that applies. So momentum stops when the racetracks become different.
Well, no matter what the racetrack is this season, it seems like the 11 team and Denny Hamlin have been running very well there. But Jeff Hammond, one of the biggest things about sitting on the pole at a track like this, sometimes when you get a pole position, it's not really that important. It's more about the check and the publicity. This time around, he's got the first pit stall selection. So if you're looking to wager on Denny Hamlin right now, that could be a huge advantage.
No, it definitely is. And on top of that, I know Steve is really big on this, that momentum factor when you come to a racetrack, from Kansas with that big win. But more importantly, you're coming to a racetrack that Denny says arguably is his favorite racetrack. You've already touched on the fact he's got 5 wins here, looking to go 6. But the key here is being on the pole, getting that number 1 pit selection. It's going to give you an advantage off of pit road all day long, no matter where you are. You're going to pick up a few positions. And more importantly, you're going to be able to set the rhythm of the race by getting out front, especially if you get a good start at the race. You can kind of set the pace, and you can start putting people down, especially if you got a fast race car, which they seem to have here today at Martinsville.
Steve, how does it look from your perspective, though, when you're running these scenarios? When we have a racetrack, this is the only racetrack that's had at least one event in every year in the history of NASCAR. Does that help with the scenarios, or does it make it a little bit tougher because there's so much information out there?
Well, the thing about Martinsville, the racing hasn't changed much over the years, so having a lot of samples there is really good for data development. So as I looked back at this race, it seemed like the key factors as I compared my past simulations to where they finished, the practice position didn't matter. Happy hour speed didn't matter. Qualifying, very important. My overall ranking of where I was the single most key factor for determining the finishing order. So interesting way to look at it. The last 3 races here been kind of calm. The last 5 races, my top 5, anybody, no DNFs out of that group. So if you are in maybe the power 5, if you will, good chance you're going to be able to avoid trouble all day, and that certainly leads to a better finish.
Seems like over the years there's been a different story at Martinsville. Years ago it was brakes. If your driver could manage his brakes, he could help you cash a ticket. Then they started talking about getting off pit road and being in the outside lane or the inside lane. But nowadays, Jeff Hammond, a lot of people are saying when you look at this race and you're trying to predict a winner or who may finish ahead, that there may be a lot to be said at who doesn't make mistakes on pit road, whether it be the driver or the crew members, because chances are, like Steve just said, these have been pretty clean and green races lately.
No, he's right about that. And the cars themselves have been almost bulletproof. They've done a great job of improving brakes, understanding how much cooling they need. Drivers have been coached very well how to stay off of them, not overwork it, letting off a little earlier as far as the discipline of the area is concerned. But the one thing that you can never factor in enough is the human element. And that's the one thing I think when you talk about our pole sitter and, the guy who's odds-on favorite, at least in my mind, Denny Hamlin, has he learned how not to speed up and down on pit road? That's one of the variables, and his pit crew is also big tip of the hat because they've been very solid on and off, not making a lot of mistakes, leaving loose wheels. And that's one thing that you got to worry about here because a lot of people don't realize that this pit road, as good as it is since they've made a lot of improvements on it, it still has a little banking, especially down toward 3 and 4. When you come on, your guys have got the cars a little bit sitting there at an angle. So some of these things come into play. Also, I want to point out that the number 9 car, Chase Elliott, to get an opening in front, he is about midway down the middle of the front straightaway just before the start-finish line, which if I have a caution and he gets caught on pit road, it may get him in trouble as far as how he comes out off of pit road too. So a lot of guys want to pit on the opposite side of that start-finish line in case the caution does come out. So a lot of factors come into play here today. but the pit crew is going to be very, very pivotal at the end of this day.
So last time we raced at Martinsville, Brad Keselowski absolutely had the field covered up, leading 440-plus laps out of the 500. But, Steve, knowing that, he came in at 7-1, but with somewhat of a lackluster practice and qualifying not exactly where they want to be. Brad Keselowski is now currently at a 12-1 instead of 7-1.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The certain thing you want to look at first is how he did back in the spring race here. I mean, that should be the number one factor. I mean, the practice being off, as I said before, the practice hasn't been very important here. How they do in happy hour. Keselowski knows how to get around this track. He's aggressive. He knows when to punt a guy if he needs to. He didn't even move on my simulation. He's still second. So I'm interested to hear maybe why these lines went the way they did.
All right, Steve, so let's now get ourselves up to the racetrack and check in with our race trackside report with Brad Gillian. This time around, it looks like Mother Nature will be cooperating with us to get a full race in. Brad?
Hey, John, Jeff, and Steve. Hope you guys are doing well today also. I'll say it's actually a nice day for racing here at Martinsville Speedway. Now, as long as Mother Nature does what the forecasters say she's supposed to do, we should be okay for 500 laps of racing. Once things do get started here today, obviously Denny Hamlin's on the pole. A lot of talk about him. He is very fast this weekend. But looking beyond that, Clint Boyer and Eric Almirola, a couple of Stewart-Haas Racing teammates, a lot of people are talking about them. They were toward the top of both practice sessions. In fact, Clint Boyer was the man who led both practice sessions when it came to a 10-lap average. And I got to say, I know Chase Elliott is starting in the back due to an engine change, but he is also very fast here this weekend, and a lot of people are talking about that number 9 Chevrolet in the garage here this weekend and how Chase Elliott, especially if cautions can fall his way, can quickly move up through the field and be a contender. Remember, it is 500 laps of racing, and that definitely goes a long way here at Martinsville Speedway.
Brad, in recent years, we've seen a lot of teams to swap entire pit crews within the organization or select the crew members. This past week, Team Penske made a pretty important announcement.
Yeah, Jeff, you're right. One of the big stories here this weekend is a pit crew swap over at Team Penske. Ryan Blaney basically got Brad Keselowski's pit crew. Now that Keselowski is out of contention, Ryan Blaney has the pit crew for the number 2. They have been one of the top performers all season long. But it's not just Ryan Blaney at Team Penske that got some changes. 2 crew members from Ryan Blaney's team actually went over to Joey Logano's team. So Logano's got a little bit of a change in the pit crew as well. Now, how that affects chemistry, that's hard to say. I really do trust Team Penske and the people over there. All those crews practice together. They're definitely at the top of their game, but now that Brad Keselowski is knocked out of playoff contention, they told themselves, look, we've got to do every possible thing that we can to bring this trophy, the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup, over to Team Penske. That's the reason that they made the change starting at Martinsville this weekend. Is it going to pay off? Only time will tell. But as you very well know, pit road, extremely important here at this racetrack, and even if you can gain 1 or 2 spots on pit road, that could be the difference between you going to Homestead Miami Speedway or you not being a championship contender when we get down to that Final Four. Looking forward to seeing how this one shakes out, and absolutely looking forward to seeing how you guys continue to handicap this one here at Martinsville Speedway. Thanks a lot, guys. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Brad. And the thing is, I just want to throw one more thing out there when we're talking about Brad Keselowski. His 10-lap average, he wound up being like 19th. Folks, this is not, and Steve, this is not the same car he raced with here in the spring. NASCAR very politely said, guys, your car was okay here in the spring, but don't bring it back. So which tells me there were some things they didn't like about this race car, so that might also be one of the reasons why he's not quite as quick and consistent as he was here in the spring. So that also, I think, affects him a little bit when we're taking a look at his odds.
Steve, start us out. What's your bet of the week?
My bet of the week, I'm going to go to the guy we spoke of just before, Kyle Busch. He's in a matchup against Joey Logano, laying minus 150. Now, let me proceed my pick by saying that over the last 6 weeks of the playoffs, I've managed to win 3 best bets while fading the winner of the race on my other 3 bets. So Joey Logano has a good chance to win then, obviously. But Busch is going to be my guy today. I like his history here. It's very consistent. He's he's just been so strong here. I cannot ignore the past data as I go to this pick.
Jeff Hammond, what do you think?
Well, I'm looking at somebody that I think can take advantage of Brad Keselowski's situation. He happens to be going to the back of the field, but he's been quick at least when qualifying comes around. How about Chase Elliott over Brad Keselowski? I'm kind of liking the way things are. Even though the average finishes favor Brad, I really think taking his pit crew away and the car away at the same time may affect him today as far as the outcome's concerned. And right now, Chase Elliott almost has his back against the wall once again as we go into this round of 8. I look for him to be strong today.
All right, so I'm going to take into consideration what Steve and Jeff have said just a moment ago in this one. Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski were matched up against each other. They opened up at minus 190 and plus 160, although I'm going to have to lay something out because it's minus 200 for Kyle Busch. I still like the bet because of the fact that he does not have the car that he had the field dominated over last time. That car is not with him. His pit crew is not with him. And a couple of races ago have not been Brad Keselowski-style races. He hasn't been doing what he is possible, what he's capable of in those last couple of races where we expect him to run. So even though I got to go minus 200 on this one, guys, I think I'm still with you in the fact that this really could be Kyle Busch's day. What do you think, Jeff?
It's hard to argue that, really is, John, because, again, to me, listen to him on some interviews, I think mentally, I think he's a little bit frustrated because, like anybody else, he wants another grandfather clock. He's good at this racetrack, and I'm sure that his attitude right now may not be as positive. And if for some reason they don't have the stop that they need to, it may be right early in the race, I could kind of think it might hurt him emotionally and physically. I don't think it's going to mess him up, but emotionally, I think he'll be a little bit on the downside today.
So what is the handicapping grade to this racetrack? We'll find that out here in just a moment as Steve Makinen's going to tell us that, and we'll dive farther into his scenarios and his simulation as to what may happen on the racetrack today. And also coming up in a little bit, Ed Salmons from the Vice President of Gaming and Risk Management at the Westgate will join us to talk about the future and the landscape of sports wagering across the country. So stay with us, everybody. Racers Odds. We'll be right back.
Gone Racing. There's still wheel to wheel. The weekly NASCAR show that gets you ready for this week's big race and more. Oh, yeah! Take a ride with us to Victory Lane on Gone Racing.
We just got these lines last night. It was plus 700 on Brad Keselowski. He's already down to plus 550, so I think we know where the money is.
It's going that way.
And that's where my money would have been, too.
Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, Channel 204, and SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90.
Great job.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
To order, call now, 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735.
The Edge, only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
How you feeling? I'm feeling good. How you doing, bro? I'm feeling good, man. How you doing? How you doing?
The Edge, weekdays 3 p.m. Eastern.
The Raiders have made some sensational headlines. I don't think you or I or anybody who seriously handicaps the NFL saying, yeah, the Raiders are going to be a playoff.
I'm talking about public
more about public team, especially in Vegas with the excitement with that team going to be here in 2020.
Only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. SiriusXM Channel 204.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back to Racers Odds, everybody. NASCAR, it is at Martinsville, one of their most historic racetracks and one of the most unique on the circuit. NASCAR racing since 1948. You got 2 drag strips and a couple of U-turns and a lot of mayhem along the way. You got to go fast as well as slowing down. So, Steve Makinen, let's hit what the handicapability grade is to this very historic racetrack.
Well, as of now, it's a B minus. That said, it seems to be trending towards the B to B plus range, and I will go over these again postseason. I usually do about a 3-year running average on these, and the last 3 races here have been somewhat caution free after a run of races where it was very caution filled. So I would see this as a track maybe trending upward, but right now it sits as a B minus.
So looking at the simulation that I got here in front of me, we got Denny Hamlin at the top, Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex, and then Kyle Busch at the 5th spot. What do you think the factors are that have Kyle Busch in the 5th spot on one of these simulations?
Well, unfortunately, his speed this weekend hasn't been what it typically is when he shows up at this track. I mean, we're relying on a history of success here that he gets him up even to 5th. I mean, if you were just to go by what we've seen this weekend, he'd be probably much lower. So he's obviously a contender, but he's going to have to show that he's got something more than he's shown so far in the few days we've been at Martinsville.
Yeah, not the best qualifying for Kyle Busch. Finds himself going off in the 13th position there. But Jeff Hammond, you said earlier that if someone is looking at Chase Elliott in some of these matchups, although the odds are somewhat against him being in the back of the field, it's not going to be long before he's up front. He's got 500 laps to do it.
Well, I think he's got a car that's capable with a little bit of patience and him being able to work the outside group early on. And the 2 stages, he may not show up on the radar till, into that second stage. He's not just going to jump up there like we've seen at places like Talladega. But I think methodically he understands what it takes to be good here. I've seen him run well and make outside group work. I look for a lot of things to come together, and he and Alan Gustafson to put it together when it comes time on pit road. Also, with some of the adjustments that will be made, he'll make his way up there toward the front. But the one thing I want to talk about with Kyle Busch, when you take a look at his overall speed as well as his practice and 10-lap average, he is the low man on the totem pole when it comes to all the Joe Gibbs cars. So it's something a little bit off on him. So even though he may be at the top of the list, and a lot of people in it, they're at the top of their list, I can see why Steve feels like he does in his overall assessment is he's off a little bit compared to what he normally is at this racetrack.
Well, folks, got a special guest for you today. We got Ed Salmons, Vice President of Risk Management and Odds Making from the Westgate Superbook. Ed, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate your time and your insight on this thing. Ed, as you look at the way sports wagering is going across the country with all these different states jumping in, from your perspective, the health of sports wagering in a whole across the country, this is kind of an amazing thing to look at, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, sports betting and sports wagering has just so increased through the years, and it's definitely something you see more in the younger demographic as far as like the 21 to 30-year-old. They've really taken to it, and it's just growing by leaps and bounds.
Hi, Ed. It's Steve Makinen. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it. I had a question for you regarding maybe the future of maybe NASCAR odds making and wagering. In its heyday, I guess, if you will, back in maybe 10, 15 years ago, there were a lot more wagering options available to the average bettor. Do you see maybe a trend in that direction, especially with the way, I guess, Westgate is making odds?
Well, I mean, you're talking about Nevada?
I don't know. Yeah, let's say Westgate specifically.
Okay. Well, I mean, every week we do all 3 series. So we do the trucks, we do Xfinity, and we do the Cup race, and we'll do 20 matchups, and we also do 6 group matchups, and we'll do that for essentially 33 of the 36 races. And then when they have the race in the local here in Las Vegas, there's 2 races here, and Daytona, we'll do some proposition wagerings for that. We've increased our menu through the years. As far as what's going around town, that's up to them personally. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing. I knew they do the race in town as far as the Las Vegas race, but outside of that, it seems like it's just odds to win.
Okay, well, I guess one of the things that intrigues me is, so let's take last week. Daniel Hemrick is on the pole. He led Happy Hour. Today, Clint Boyer has been very successful this weekend so far. There's not many chances to actually wager on him or on Hemrick last week. I guess that's something I'd like to see, where maybe a chance to bet on every driver in some format other than the to win odds.
You mean to run like first through third or top 10, stuff like that?
Sure. Any creativity there, I think, would be very helpful to the NASCAR bettor.
Yeah, no, I think that's something when essentially better platforms come on board that makes it more user-friendly for the odds maker. Right now, all of that would have to be done in essentially a matchup, the driver against the driver. Each one would have to be set up separately. And with football season going on, there's just not enough time from our end of it to make that practicable.
So, Ed, is there something else that moves the odds in NASCAR throughout the week? I know sometimes when you talk about people being bet up or bet down, I know you have to adjust too in odds when it comes to where somebody qualifies or where they practice. But do all those things factor in to make some of these big swings we see throughout the week?
Oh, absolutely. I would say the biggest thing is practice. Qualifying, I think, gets overrated by a lot of people. As Jeff was saying about Chase Elliott starting in the back today, I don't think that's going to be an issue for him. He's got a car that has top 5 speed easily today, and as long as he can just get through that first stage without any problems with his pit stall, he'll be fine. So, people that want to bet against him today, do that at your own peril. But I would say for the most part, it's going to be practice speeds. The practice speeds tell you so much about the cars that you expect to run really well.
So, Ed, many years ago, I say many years ago, probably when NASCAR was just starting its heyday, and there were some bets out there in sports books that were available. It seemed like that they were fairly easy to look at and to perhaps win. But now, when you look at the way that these odds come out now, these drivers are so easily matched. It seems like there's just a ton of technology and a ton of knowledge that goes into matching these drivers and setting these odds. Because when you look at them, it's not easy to bet on either side of these.
Well, that's the end of it. That's the part that we're trying to do. Is you're trying to group the right drivers against the right drivers. Obviously, if you put a matchup, let's just say Kyle Larson. This is a track that he just struggles at. At some point of his career, maybe he'll get it better, but right now he doesn't. So you can't use Kyle Larson against a Kyle Busch or a Denny Hamlin, unless you use a price that's like -$3 or $4. You're just not going to do that. And, as you were saying, years ago when NASCAR first came to Las Vegas, people would basically put the odds up, put the matchups up, and then just forget about it and let people bet it, and they'd ignore practice. It doesn't work like that anymore. There's too many smart people around, and if you don't keep up with it, you're just going to get you're just going to be in a bad situation for the sportsbook end of it. So it's something that we've learned to follow, understand practice speeds, and understand betting patterns.
So, Ed, stay with us here. We got to hit a quick commercial break, but we'll be back with you in just a moment. We're going to dive into some of the matchups we have this week and want to talk to you a little bit more about what goes into odds making for NASCAR. So stay with us, everybody, and we'll take a quick break. Be back with more Racers Odds in just a moment.
A numbers game with Gil Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, our pleasure to have Jeremy Piven in studio.
I'm really good friends with Julian Edelman. He and I are very similar size and almost identical, except he's an elite athlete. I'm not. Other than that, everything lines up.
Same person.
Yeah, same. I run the same routes.
And every time we see Julian Edelman on Sunday, we'll be thinking of you.
There you go.
A numbers game with Gil Alexander. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern. VSiN.com and Sirius XM 204. VSiN, the news you need to win.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. It's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
To order, call now 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735.
Before the pros tee off for this week's golf tournament, the VEASAN experts help you make the cut on long shots.
When I profiled all the players for this tournament, I said Schauffele's number one on my board. I like the odds at 25-1. Let's go ahead and play X.
Brady Cannon, Matt Humans, and Wes Reynolds are your weekly betting caddies and help you cash those tickets.
Don't be afraid to maybe take some longer odd guys.
Don't miss Long Shots, Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern on VEASAN, the only golf betting show you need. Exclusively on Sirius XM Channel 204.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
And welcome back, everybody, to Racers Odds. Glad you're with us as we get ready for Martinsville. The big paperclip in Virginia is where NASCAR's top series will be racing this weekend. Special guest with us, though, today, Ed Salmons, who is the Vice President of Risk Management and Odds Making for the Westgate Superbook. Ed, thanks again for your time with us and hanging on with us here. I wanted to ask you, when you guys are putting together odds for a race, I mean, I feel as if, when we have the Steelers playing the Ravens, you know who's going to be there, what quality of an athlete they are, what quality of a team you have. But the variable nature of an engine blowing up, a tire getting cut down, all the different things that go into these different racetracks, how much can you take that into consideration when handicapping a race?
I mean, you really can't. I mean, that's just random luck. That can happen, like you say, in sports where you get a bad call or a fumble at the 1-yard line or any bad thing that can happen. That's just a bad thing that can happen. But it can go both ways. Your guy can get a flat tire, the other guy can get a flat tire. It's just part of the gambling aspect of it.
Ed, one of the things I was curious about at looking at this week's groupings, one of the guys I would like to have bet on is Clint Boyer, but yet he's not anywhere in any of the grouping. Is there any possibility that, that if I wanted to make a bet within groups, could I go to the Westgate or any place and get a group bet made up which would include a Clint Boyer in it, or that's the way you guys just do your business and that's it?
No, it's just the way the race fell this week. I do all of my odds on Monday afternoon, and basically I had 9 guys that were just head and shoulders above everybody else, and Clint Boyer was a 9th, and I just, I could have thrown him in possibly Group B, which I didn't, because he always runs well here, and he had a great practice. And I didn't want to match him in Group C against Kyle Larson and Eric Jones and Jimmy Johnson, just because he would be such a prohibitive favorite. That's why I left him out this week.
Got it.
So, Ed, we're going to jump into some of our matchups right here. If you can help us out with these. We try to pick every week on Racers Odds a bet that we really like. One that we like this week, again, even though it's a pretty big, it would be a smaller payout. Kyle Busch at -200 against Brad Keselowski in our first set of matchups. Is that a wise way to go with what Kyle Busch has done at this racetrack and what Brad Keselowski has done lately?
When you bet matchups, unless you have, if it was Kyle Busch against Kyle Larson, I would highly advise laying the $2. But against Brad Keselowski and his history here, that's, to me, a long run. You need to hit 67% to break even. I don't think you would do that in the long run, so that's not a good bet from the bettor's end of it.
Gotcha. Okay, so a couple other ones to look at here. We got Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. Steve, that was Kyle Busch over Denny Hamlin was yours, was it not? Was that one of your faves?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kyle Busch over Logano.
Logano, that's right. I'm sorry. So, Ed, what about that one? Steve's got Kyle Busch -150 over Joey Logano. Certainly less of a layout and probably a much better bet here.
Yeah, we actually had someone lay the -150 today, so we're currently at Kyle Busch -170, Joey Logano +145. And, that's one, history-wise definitely says, yes, that's going to be a good wager. But I felt like Logano had a really good practice yesterday. You may not see it in the 10-lap averages, but he ran like consecutive laps, like 30, 40 consecutive laps, and I thought his times looked really good, and I expect a good race from Joey today.
All right, so Chase Elliott is one guy that a lot of people are looking at because he has a great record at this racetrack. Probably could have won one or two of these along the way if it wasn't for something else. But Chase Elliott also is the guy that's going to have to come from the back of the pack, and that means he's going to have a different strategy than most.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to keep things simple for us, we need to try to win, and if you're not in a position to win, get as many points as possible. And I just think that keeps things simple for you. And I'm going to be trying to, be as far forward as I can be at each particular moment, and try to make the smartest decision that I can throughout the day to get us there. So.
All right, so not a lot of real estate to do it, but a lot of laps to do it in. So watch Chase Elliott. It's going to be very entertaining. And Jeff Hammond, as we go on to our matchups number 2, that is where you like Chase Elliott to be one of your favorites here.
Yeah, again, if you weren't with us a little earlier, I was talking about Brad Keselowski. Doesn't have the car that he was so dominant with here in the spring. He's also had his pit crew has been, cannibalized by his teammates this weekend. So he's not got a bad pit crew, but he doesn't have those guys that have been lightning fast and consistent this weekend. So, yes, I feel like Chase Elliott's crew has been performing well. I think he's got a fast race car. He's already proven that by qualifying on the first row, second. Even though he's got to go to the back, still got a lot of racing to do. I like him by the end of the day.
Steve Makinen and Chase Elliott opened up at 7-1. He's currently 6-1. I guess the odds makers didn't really think going to the back of the pack really made that much of a difference.
Yeah, I believe Ed just said that exact thing. He thinks he's going to have a strong car. He's the one setting the numbers. He doesn't really care whether he went to the back or not. He's good. I would say by at least, I think Jeff Hammond said maybe in the second stage. I would say by at least that he'll be up near the top 10.
So I guess, Ed, if somebody like Jeff Hammond was talking about a second ago about making a bet, he could go to Clint Boyer at 25-1. Clint, Ed, didn't move at all, even though he had that strong practice, stayed at 25-1.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain drivers, there's certain drivers that rarely get action, especially if they don't win for a while, and their odds are somewhat considered low, like 25-1 for Clint Boyer. It's not like the 60-1 or 80-1 that you're seeing on Jimmy Johnson and Bowman and Byron. And people aren't willing to gamble on 25-1 on Clint Boyer just because he doesn't win that often. But I agree. I think 25-1, if you're looking to bet a little and make a decent profit, I think he's got a real shot today if things go his way.
And the thing is, Ed, I agree with you right there. That's one of I put in for one of my long shots would be Clint Boyer, just because of the fact he was good in the 10-lap average. He has won here recently. And they've gotten their team together and performing a lot better than they have in recent months, especially since the first time they were here early this year. I think they've turned a lot of things around, and I see optimism in that 14-car camp.
So, guys, as we move on to matchups number 3, features some drivers we haven't talked much about lately. In this one, it's kind of it's strange for us to wait till we get to the third set of matchups to talk about a driver like Kevin Harvick. But he's even money, Ed, with Ryan Blaney, both minus 110.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, Harvick is this is not his track to win, but it's Harvick. He'll drive between 3rd and 8th the whole race today. He always does. And Blaney, the last couple races here, he's led a bunch of laps. He could have won, I believe. The last 2 races he had a realistic chance to win. He had some problems that happened at the end, but he's really picked up on this track all of a sudden. And, I thought that was an interesting matchup because it's kind of like you've got the turtle and the hare in that I think Blaney's probably going to lead for a lot of laps as far as beating Harvick, but I think in the end Harvick will eventually, because he's so consistent, that he'll probably finish 5th and Blaney probably finish like 7th or 8th.
Yeah, good reason why people call him the closer as to how he comes through at the end of these races. Steve Makinen in his third group of matchups. Is there anything that sticks out particularly for you?
Had an interesting observation here. I want to find out what Hammond thinks about this. But Kyle Larson, his broken rib, driving at Martinsville is not exactly the best place you want to be driving around with a broken rib. How do you see that affecting him today?
Honestly, I think here he can get by with it. Believe it or not, it's not that hot today. So being comfortable inside the car, they've worked on that comfort level. He seems like he is relatively not in pain right at the moment. Now, next week when we get away from here and head to Texas, that'll be a horse of a different color. Because when you go in there and feel those G-forces, they're going to load you in the side of that seat like never before. But here, they can get enough bracing in his shoulder area and his hip area to keep him off those ribs if they so desire. Listen to an interview. They've also changed his lap belts so to not put pressure anywhere in that rib cage area. So I think if he's going to get by with it, it'll be here today. It will help him, but it doesn't mean he's going to improve his overall driving. I do not like Kyle Larson at this particular racetrack.
You know, it's funny, and Ed, to you in terms of making odds, how things change over the years. You know, we have a 9-time winner at this racetrack in Jimmy Johnson, but we lately, you know, it's just the fact of the matter. It's the what have you done for me lately scenario that we find him in just one matchup with Kyle Larson. It's clearly people are paying attention when they make the odds because the 9-time champion, the 9-time winner can't sway you. It's what have you done lately?
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy's team has actually picked up speed since they replaced the crew chief, and, you know, they're running much better than they have all year. But, you know, from running 10th to competing for wins is just a world of difference in NASCAR. And you like to see the progression. I don't think Jimmy's close to winning a race right now. But, you know, this is a track that he used to dominate. I can recall back in the day he would be like 5-2 or 2-1 to win here. That's how often he won. But, you know, those days are long gone now. But, you know, I still think you'd like to see him progress and get into the top 10.
Ed, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it and the insight. And as this thing grows and we continue to get more wagering on the table and hopefully do more programs about this, I'd love to check back in with you. But thanks again for the time and the insight.
Okay, you're welcome. Have a good day.
All right, that is Ed Salmons, Vice President of Risk Management and Odds Making. And so he, you know, I don't know if you guys noticed that one, but the one bet he really didn't like was the one I liked the best. And it just happened. But
you see what I'm doing right here? You see what I'm doing right here?
But I don't know though. Maybe maybe it pans out.
No. Just remember, you have time to change it, John.
I don't want to change it.
You don't want to change it?
No, I don't want to change it.
Okay.
It's
he
Kyle
actually
Busch.
didn't say you were wrong. He just said you were paying too high of a price.
Yeah, story of my life.
Well, now we know, Steve, who's making all the money on the show. He's got that kind of money to throw away.
Guys, let's grab us a quick break here because now we got to take a look at the group matchups. You'll find some of these intriguing as well because of some of the things that have happened during the week and during the weekend. We'll tell you which one of these groups may be a wise wager, so stay with us.
As states have begun the legalization of sports gambling, the entire sports landscape is changing.
I think we're going to see more and more states fall in line, and this gets legalized across probably all 50 states.
And so is the way you listen to Sports Talk Radio. I'm Brent Musburger, and on the Vegas Stats and Information Network, we follow the money and the games. It's sports talk you can bet on. So check out VSiN. Odds are you're going to like what you hear on Channel 204 and streaming on your phone or at home on SiriusXM connected devices and speakers.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
To order, call now, 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735.
VSiN is
the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
VSiN is
analysis that's always on the money.
The total on this game, 8 flat.
VSiN is
the home of legendary broadcaster Brent Musburger.
I do want to talk about the next big thing in Las Vegas.
VSiN is
your all-access pass behind the counter of a Las Vegas sportsbook.
Trends don't pay the rent. They're looking at the number.
VSiN, what are the odds?
Find out on Sirius XM Channel 204.
It's more Racers Odds.
As far as results of the playoffs, I mean, I don't have a sheet in front of me, but I can run you down problems in every single race. So there hasn't been a clean race that we've had in the playoffs that have given us the opportunity to run up front all day, be in control of our own destiny towards the end of the race. We're always coming from behind. So every time you're coming from behind, you know, you can only make up so much.
And last week we showed that again. We drove through the field 3 times and could only get to second. We were limited by second there at the end, even with 4 tires versus the guy out front with 2.
So this will tell you a lot about this championship format we have in NASCAR right now. Despite the fact that Kyle Busch has had some type of trouble in almost every playoff race, he still finds himself as the top seed with 4,046 points, just a little bit ahead of second seed Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, and Joey Logano. So now we have this round of 8 races, Martinsville, Texas, and Phoenix. So chances are we could fill 3 spots in the championship with these 3 races if someone can win. With that in mind, let's take a look at our group wagering, what we can do here. Kyle Busch is involved in this one. And guys, this is difficult, a really difficult group to do because any of these drivers, they're so evenly matched, Steve. It'd be hard to pick somebody out of here, I would think.
Yeah, the interesting thing I see out of this group and these odds is that Kyle Busch plus 230 to win this group, plus 350 to win the whole race. And that doesn't even include guys like Logano, Elliott, Ryan Blaney. If you're gonna do this group, you might as well if you're gonna go to win odds, you might as well step into this group. The odds are way better.
Yeah, exactly there. So let's move on to Group B. Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, Kevin Harvick, and Ryan Blaney. There we see Harvick popping up once again. Not one of his better tracks, but like Ed Salmons pointed out just a moment ago here, that Harvick always seems to find a way to produce a good finish. But Hammond, he's going to have to finish in front of Chase Elliott, which we have already said we feel he's a good bet to come from the back of the pack. And then he's got Blaney and Logano up there as well.
No, I think it's going to be a challenge for him, but at the same time, I think that there is a possibility, and you've already kind of talked about where my feelings are with Chase Elliott. I think Chase Elliott has got an opportunity here, even though he's at 215. I think that he's the guy that I still would be kind of favoring in this group. I think he's quicker than the rest of them. All he's got to do is just get through this early part of the race, because if you remember, Kevin Harvick's pretty deep also in the field, and somewhere along the way, Kevin and Chase are going to be having to go up at each other pretty early in this event to try to kind of see where they stack up. And I think Chase has got a faster car right now.
Okay, so I think in Group C you have a mystery, a puzzle, and an enigma. You got Kurt Busch, 1 win at Martinsville, but that was a long time ago. Jimmy Johnson, 9 wins, but he has been, they haven't had the speed they need. Eric Jones has been hit or miss just about everywhere, and we know Kyle Larson is coming into a very difficult race with a broken rib. Steve Makinen, I don't think we can really say for sure what any of these drivers might do today. It's a very mysterious little group.
Yeah, one of the guys that catches my eye here is actually Eric Jones. I did a little study here on the manufacturer's success here in the last 5 races, and the average finishes are Toyota 16.8, Ford 17.2, Chevy way back 22.8. Jones, obviously Toyota, he's going up against 3 Chevys in this group. He's had good speed this weekend. I think he may have some value in this group.
Okay, at a plus 220 there. Let's go into Group D, where we find Daniel Suarez, Eric Almirola, Alex Bowman, and William Byron. Jeff Hammond, does anybody stick out to you?
Probably Daniel Suarez right now. He's been running pretty good for this entire weekend. He's had some decent runs on short tracks. So I kind of like what he is bringing to the table right at the moment. And I will divert back to Steve on this one analogy on other Group C and throw this out there on Eric Jones. Eric Jones has not had a top 10 on a short track in 2019. So he's not really been kind of like, turning my head or anybody else's head when it comes to that, getting that job done there. Just FYI.
Yeah. Do you see any of these other 3 being a top 10 though today? I mean, I guess that would be my only.
The only one I can say might be a spoiler here today could wind up being Jimmy Johnson, because it's still a good racetrack overall. It's a good place for him and his team to continue to grow. And here recently, he's been able to wind up eking out anywhere between the 8th place and the 12th place finish in last few races. So this might be one of those days that he could outdo this group as far as that's concerned, just by that small margin.
Okay, and out of the Group D that we're talking about also with Suarez, Almirola, Alex Bowman, and William Byron, that out of the group here, the highest qualifier is Eric Almirola at a 4th place. Let's move on to Group E. where we see Ryan Preece, who always tends to surprise us a little bit with his finishes these days. Paul Menard has had the neck and the back trouble lately and has announced that he won't be racing next year. Newman and Stenhouse in there. Stenhouse knows where he's going to race next year, as does Ryan Newman. So Ryan Newman at a plus 160 in that group. Steve, does anybody intrigue you there?
This is very intriguing to me. Ryan Preece got bumped up to this group. He's typically with the Wallace McDowell group. I think Salmon's kind of maybe sees something out of Preece today. He's been doing pretty well, 3 straight top 20s. He had out of these other 3 guys, he had 7 spots better on the 10 lap average in practice. So it's very intriguing here at plus 310. I think Salmon's maybe seen something here.
Just take a look at one thing, guys. When you think about Ryan Preece, where does he come from? He is a short track ace from up the Northeast, and he does really well at places like Loudon. Would not be surprised. Again, this is the kind of racetrack that would probably fit his talent range, and if they give him a good car today, he could wind up being a guy that could turn some heads.
So another group here was some guys who we're not too sure about where they might finish up, but one driver that sticks out in Group F, Michael McDowell, had a great qualifying and good round of practice. He's going to go off 5th. Jeff, do you think he can stay up there?
Well, he's been putting up some good qualifying here lately a lot, all the way back into Talladega, Kansas, and coming into here. The problem is they're not closing the deal out. That's the only thing that makes me a little bit nervous about Michael. I mean, a place like this, and we keep talking about Martinsville being a rhythm racetrack and hit your marks and being able to get out of the gas and know how to stay off the brakes. This should be something he's good at because he's a good road racer. But if out of this group right here, I think he does have the potential to have a breakout day and possibly get a top 15 place finish.
So of the groups, Steve, do you think E with Ryan Preece is one of the better ones or the best one?
Well, it's the only one I think I'm going to go with today with a plus 310. I like the price there too. Yeah, the other ones are difficult. I gotta be honest.
Yep, and that's what we're here for,
yep.
Right? For just that purpose, though, because sometimes it's really hard in these. You have to lay out a good bit of money on these wagers, and at the same time, your driver in the group has to finish ahead of 3 other drivers rather than just one. So you have to look at the performance and what might happen on this short track, because we know Martinsville can equal mayhem at times. So it's a very difficult bet to make. When we go to the short track, might even be easier to pick one of the winners. So we got to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about championship odds. They change throughout the playoffs, change throughout the years, but now it is going to be a little bit easier to make a prediction as to who might be champion because we've whittled it down to 8 contenders. We'll be back with championship odds in just a moment.
The Edge, only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
How you feeling? I'm feeling good. How you doing, bro? I'm feeling good, man. How you doing? How you doing?
The Edge, weekdays 3 p.m. Eastern.
The Raiders have made some sensational headlines. Well, I don't think you or I or anybody who seriously handicaps the NFL saying, yeah, the Raiders are going to be a playoff.
I'm talking more public
more about public team, especially in Vegas with the excitement with that team going to be here in 2020.
Only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Sirius XM Channel 204.
It's crazy.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
To order, call now, 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735.
You didn't think he'd put down the microphone completely, did you?
Greetings from Las Vegas.
Well, neither did we. Hear legendary broadcaster Brent Musburger on the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
I never told my wife how much fun I had when I was staying here for about 3 weeks. Oh, it's terrible living in a casino.
It was the greatest 3 weeks of my life. This is the only book in town that's open 24 hours.
There you go.
Make that bet around 4 o'clock in the morning.
You don't need a dress code. Pajamas are good.
Brent Musburger on the Vegas Stats and Information Network, Sirius XM Channel 204.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
And welcome back once again, everybody. I'm John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, Steve Makinen, and Brad Gilley with you on this edition of Racers Odds. Want to say thanks again to Ed Salmons for joining us along the way and giving us some great insight. But guys, now let's look at the big picture. Really difficult to predict a race winner, even more hard to pick a driver to win the championship. But now we're down to 8 contenders, and we've seen a little bit of moving and shaking going on this week when it comes to where they started out and where they currently are. Last week, Kevin Harvick was a plus 450, tied with Kyle Busch. Now Harvick at plus 400, Kyle Busch at plus 300. Martin Truex remains at plus 350. Now, Steve, as we get closer and closer to Homestead, of course, the gains probably are a little bit less, but it's probably a little bit safer, isn't it, to wager now on a championship contender now that we've whittled it down a little bit?
Yeah, I would think so. And, as you go through this odds board here, I think you got to look at the guy with the longest odds, being one of the hotter drivers here, Ryan Blaney. It's going to take one win of the next 3. And I think the way he's been running, up front, I think he has a chance to win one of these next 3 races, and he's not real far behind in the points. So even if he doesn't and he's getting finishes in the top 3, maybe, he's got a good shot here. I like the fact he's going to Texas next week. Good spot for him, I believe. 20-1. I'm starting to think if you got 20-1 now and you're sitting in 4 weeks and you're in Homestead thinking, man, I got Ryan Blaney at 21. I got a pretty nice ticket in my hand, and he's still in the running for the championship. I think you have a real good shot there.
Yeah, exactly, Steve, because a couple weeks ago we told our listeners and our viewers that it was a good bet maybe to jump onto Chase Elliott. He was 25-1 at the time because of one bad performance. Now he's up to 12-1. If we got him at 25-1 and he goes on to be one of the championship 4. But here's what's interesting, what a win can do for you. Last week, Denny Hamlin was 6-1. Now, Steve, he's plus 350 with that win. That can do a lot for your odds. Now, this time around, if you get a win in this round, you're at least locked into the championship. So I think that would make you move a lot odds-wise.
Yeah, well, he's obviously capable of winning almost anywhere. If you recall, when I talked about my simulation for the 10 races of the playoffs, he was actually my projected champion by finishing first at Homestead in that last race. So there's a reason his odds are what they are.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you bring that up, as far as possibly winning at Homestead, he's the only guy right now currently still in the playoffs that has multiple wins at a place like at Homestead, for example. If he gets there, he does have a pretty good record there at that particular racetrack, because people keep talking about Kyle Larson. If he can only get into that final round, how good he is at Homestead. Well, so far, he's never made it this far. So until he gets there, I think that's the reason why you see where his odds are. Even though they're not bad, they're not where you think he would be for a guy who is as quick as he is.
Yeah, Larson moved down from 7-1 to 16-1, the only one of this group of 8 that had moved in that direction. So, Steve, want to recap our bets of the week. Go ahead and tell us once again what yours was and what your thinking was behind it.
Well, my best bet of the week, I may actually go to a 1B after taking in some of the shower today. Could I do that? Or because I like the Kyle Busch and Logano thing, but actually Ed kind of talked me into something with the Jimmy Johns. I'm almost in a point here, and despite what Hammond said, I'm in a point here I might be fading him. Kyle Larson's 9 spots better than him on my simulation. If you look back at my ratings for the track ratings, Kyle Larson's 13th here. Jimmy Johnson's 15th. It's not like he's better than Larson at Martinsville. So there's a lot of factors here that are in favor of Larson. He's putting a short price, minus 130. He is going to be point hunting today. I don't think anybody thinks he can win, but he's going to be getting every spot he can. And I just don't think Johnson has the ability to think in that way where he's going to be getting every spot he can anymore. So Kyle Larson, minus 130. I like that one. And I'm also going to stick with the Busch over Logano.
So about 17 minutes now to the green flag, and Martinsville looks clean and green as far as weather goes. Jeff Hammond, what's your bet of the week?
We'll stick with the one we've been talking about as far as Chase Elliott versus Brad Keselowski. Even though the numbers don't look that great on the statistic side of it, I like the speed in the 9 car. I feel like the fact that his crew chief will do a better job on pit road right now than Paul Wolf with what guys they got to work with. Brad's got a whole different group, so I think that's going to hurt him, and that'll keep him deep in the field when he needs to be moving up off of pit road.
Now, Steve and Jeff are very kind to me. They said it would be possible if I would like to back out after we examine my pick. But I'm going to stick with it here for some of the reasons that the scenarios that Steve ran and the information that Jeff Hammond has given us, I still feel even at minus 200, what's going to get me here with Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski, I got to lay down $2 to win $1. But this is one where I feel like I can cash a ticket on this one because of what's going on with Brad Keselowski lately. That's not the car he dominated with that he's got it back, and that's not his pit crew that he had before. So while it's not the most wise bet in terms of what I might win, I still feel like this one is going to be a good one in terms of it panning out in the right direction. At least we hope.
Yeah, we'll see.
As Brent says, it's about cashing tickets. It doesn't matter if the ticket's for $2, $1, whatever. It's about cashing tickets.
Yeah, and some of us guys are cheap, so that's fine. so, Steve, when you look at this thing once again, what we have seen lately in this scenario is a very clean and green Martinsville race. Strange for a short track. You think that's going to happen again this time around, or are people going to do some wrecking?
Well, it's Jeff talks about a lot. I think it's a lot about these drivers' patience today. You got 8 drivers who have real high stakes going today. Especially, I like what I hear Kyle Busch talking about doing whatever it takes here. If he has to dump a guy, he's going to do it. I mean, that kind of thing can throw some havoc into a race like this, and short track tempers get heated, and it makes it interesting.
Did you guys watch the truck race on Saturday? That's what we're going to see here, because all of a sudden everybody realizes all these points make a difference in every stage, and at the end, look for the fact that 17 and 18 we had to go into overtime. 19 will be no different.
The intensity is at an all-time high in Martinsville. The big paperclip in Virginia is the scene for this first race in the final round before we decide who the championship 4 are going to be. Thanks for coming along for the ride, everybody. Hope the information was good for you to go and cash a ticket, and we will see you next week as we continue Racers Odds.
This has been Racers Odds, a presentation of TRN, the Performance Racing Network.